Fabulous. So I just want to welcome everyone and honor you for showing up to this second session. I did a session last week on kind of going through the new curriculum, the Phys.Ed and wellness curriculum, and trying to simplify it so it was easier for especially generalists to digest. So the new curriculum has a lot of rich content in it. There's a lot of stuff that I'm actually quite excited about, but there are quite a few different frameworks within it. So if you weren't able to attend that session, there are two things. I'm running a few more introductory sessions. I think I have two more, one next week and then one on the 30th, somewhere around there. It's all on the ARPD site. So I'll be going through that again just to help people get their feet kind of centered in it. This session is kind of the extension of it. So in this one, I'm going to be looking at year planning for both the physical education and the wellness side from a few different perspectives. It's going to take about 20 minutes. So I'm going to use some of the existing Alberta Ed templates. I've created a template and I'll show you a few other things and some focuses. These sessions that I'm building with in conjunction with the ARPDC were, when I was asked to do them, I was asked to build them so generalists would get something out of it and specialists would also get something out of it. So hopefully this serves you. We'll have a time to do some question and answer at the end. After that first 20 minutes, we'll stop and take a few questions. After that, I'm going to spend about the same amount of time talking through a really cool way to teach Phys.Ed, which is teaching games for understanding. And it's a different approach than our traditional physical education model. And in there, again, I'm going to talk about some background. People are getting their PhD in this concept, so it's not going to be a deep dive, but hopefully it'll give you some perspective for when you go into the gym with an activity on ways to start to look at it a little bit different. So I have been a elementary generalist. I've also taught grade K or kindergarten, grade 1 all the way up to grade 12. I've had a pretty diverse career, and let's jump in. So this I've already talked about, different ways to plan the year. The next one is teaching games for understanding. Why me? Hopefully you had a chance to read my bio. It's pretty long. The big thing is that I love pedagogy. I come from two teachers. My mother just retired from the university at the age of 81. My father was a 35-year English and drama teacher. I've always thrived on the idea that if a student isn't succeeding, it's not that that kid can't do it, it's how I'm approaching it. So that kind of gets embedded into everything I talk about. Calgary Board of Ed, fantastic. So we'll jump right in. So the first thing is what works for your team. When we all sit down to year plan, and this session is challenging because year planning is a little bit like how you start your year. Everyone has their own like highlights the way they do it. In Phys.Ed and in wellness, some of the key things are to really dial in on what's going to be taken out in the gym. What are the soft skills that you're working on? In Calgary Board of Education, we're moving more and more towards learning cycles versus months. So I have a few different templates you can use. We're currently working on 8 to 12 week learning cycles because we're an alternative environment. So this is the first thing that we want to consider. The next thing is, are we going to be concerned with sports and activities? For example, are you going to have a badminton unit? So in our school here, I'm a grade 1 to grade 9. I have to run a badminton module because we have a badminton team and we have one badminton court. So these little pieces fit into that long-term plan. The next one is strategic concepts. So that's the teaching games for understanding that we'll start looking at in the next part of this session. The dimensions. If you were in my session last week, we did take a look at what those dimensions are, and they're similar to what they were in the old curriculum. So it's things like gymnastics, we have team games, we have adventurous, we have like those are like more of your risk taking, we have outdoor games, cultural games. Have we taken the time to build those into our year? What I found with many of the elementary generalists that I've worked with over the last couple of decades is that because your lives are so busy, and I have been an elementary generalist, I taught grade 1, grade 2-3, a 3-4 split, and then a 2-3 split. I know how much planning goes on in those classes. And there were weeks when I was just like, okay, Phys.Ed, we're just going to go into the gym and play a game. If we start to look at these dimensions and highlighting some of the key strategies or the cusps that are in this new curriculum, it actually gives you a targeted focus for that. Just like if we were doing writing or even math. So let's say in math, I'm targeting part to whole. In the gym, maybe I'm going to target teamwork. And no matter what game I'm doing, I can focus on that. And the last one is the health and wellness focus. This is a huge curriculum with regards to how much of a scope it covers. That being said, once you see the summarized documents that I've been working on, the number of cusps in each one is actually quite manageable. So I do want to show this. This is an example of a traditional way to plan a year and the teaching games for understanding, which is more of a tactical approach. So in a traditional one, we'd have games, maybe soccer, football in the spring, volleyball, basketball. We got some people joining, fantastic. Volleyball, basketball, maybe some handball. We'd maybe doing some circus games in the winter. When it gets nicer out, maybe in the spring, we're starting to do some fitness, indoors, outdoors. And as the cycles move forward, now we're going to go back outside as much as we can. With the teaching games for understanding model, and the reason I'm kind of bringing this forward is that the new curriculum does talk quite a bit about this notion of spatial awareness, not as embedded within games, but in itself. So instead of logs, maybe we spend the first cycle doing spatial awareness. Then we do some invasion games, which soccer and football are. And we do some target or net and wall games. So I just want to keep this in your mind because it's going to come up a few times in the next hour. So some things to consider. And if you're a Phys.Ed specialist, I don't think I saw any here. One of the challenges as a diehard Phys.Ed specialist is that our Phys.Ed specialists in elementary are becoming very rare, especially in my board. What that means is that coming together as a team to plan your year is sometimes challenging. And because we don't have enough time to sit down and get really specific, if no one's planning your year for you, how are you quickly going to map out what you're going to do in your class or in that year or in that cycle even? So a few things to keep in mind is, number one, what equipment do you have? And remember, equipment doesn't have to be used for its intended purposes. What spaces do you have? Do you have a place where you can do some kind of relaxation or stretching? How many fields do you have? Are there other classes that have Phys.Ed before or after you where you could combine and now have a big wide game, or you could give them options or modules in there? This next one is pretty important. It's what are you comfortable teaching, especially in elementary? So where I would be comfortable running a badminton unit, having 24 kids on 2 badminton courts, I'm comfortable managing that safety. If you're not, this new curriculum gives you so many opportunities to do badminton-like activities. I know I have an elementary teacher here currently who uses balloons a lot for this, especially in the grade 1-2s. So if you're not comfortable teaching it, either get the training, ask someone, or modify. And the last one is that notion again of what are you focusing on in specific cycles. Now I have created a pretty cool, I think it's cool. I created it. Part of me is I like to summarize things. I want to make this as easy for people as possible. So part of the summarization document that I refer to, which we'll see shortly, part of that is an opportunity to see all of the cusps in 2 lines. And we can break them down into Phys.Ed and into wellness. So in one learning cycle, if you're going to focus on, let's say, some of the safety pieces, you can check those off as you see them with kids. Okay, now, I'm a pretty diehard paper on clipboard assessment Phys.Ed guy. The reason being is that it works, and if I drop it, it's not going to get broken. Again, that'll be another session coming forward, but I just want you to know that I've tried to really create a series to support you through all these little pieces. It just might take a few sessions to get there. So this is a review of the organizing ideas from Learning Alberta, the OIs. We have 8 of them. And the way I've split them up here is into the really heavy Phys.Ed ones the ones that work for both, and then the ones that if I was teaching it, well, I am teaching it, when I'm teaching it, I'm actually pulling out to do that in either a thematic way, integrated into another subject, or I'm teaching it in isolation. So the active living, that one's straightforward. The movement skills, as a quick refresher from last time, movement skills in this curriculum is actually 3 separate pieces. Okay, so in our second one, we have strategy, spatial awareness, movement skills, which is all your hard skills, things like throwing, catching, kicking. And then we have the social emotional, and this one here is the teamwork part, the character development part. Character and safety and relationships, it's called healthy relationships. These 3 in light blue, this is what we do in Phys.Ed. A Phys.Ed specialist, this is embedded into every single unit. For example, when you walk into a gym, do your students know what to look at for hazards? Is that a question that we're asking? If not, that's a really quick way to get kids start to be safety conscious in the gym. Doesn't take any more time. And the gray ones, these are going to be primarily your integrated thematic or your wellness health kind of class that you're building in. Some neat crossovers there. So the blue ones and the gray ones, for the rest of this kind of session, I want you to think about kind of keeping those separate, okay? Because those ones don't really mix. It's the equivalent to our Phys.Ed curriculum our last one, and our health and wellness. So I just said that. I don't need to go over it. This slide deck has a lot more links and stuff into it. Trish, who organizes everything for us at the ARPDC, when this recording is done, she's going to just embed these resources underneath the video. Okay, so I've tried to make it as easy as possible in PDFs. This is the stuff we're going to take a look at in kind of the next 10-15 minutes. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. If you have questions, though, either unmute. I think there are 8 of us on live. Yeah. You can unmute, ask me a quick question, or pop it in the chat. I'll keep on watching here just so I can answer as we go. So just because many people haven't ever planned long-term for Phys.Ed, this is a really typical kind of way to do it. And this one is from the Alberta Learning Resources. I've pulled the PDF for you because it's a little bit older. It's working on the old curriculum, but it's really good. Okay, I've used something similar to this for years. So we have the months across the top, dimensions. It's hard to keep track of all the dimensions because there's 7 of them, right? And we do have to hit all of them. Unit. In this one, you'll notice they're using a teaching games for understanding. So they've got cooperative, net, wall, target, and invasion. That's a lot to do in a month, just so you know. I would have 1 or 2 of those max. The general outcomes, for these ones, it's the old ABCDs. One of my challenges analyzing the new curriculum was the fact that there's no organizing numbers, letters, or system. There was nothing with that embedded in it. So again, the curricular summary document that I've been working on for everyone actually has a numbering and letter system. So when you get to this, you can refer to that and then just put in the numbers. Otherwise, you have to write down guiding questions. And I just find that's a little slow. Okay. Evaluation and resources. So this is a great way to do it. I'll give you some tools and tips on how to get into that a little quicker. The next one is a resource that comes from, again, Learn Alberta. No, this is the Calgary Board of Education one. This is from our guide to implementation. And this is just a really overarching. So they broke this down into kind of months, and they've just put down that guiding question that they're going to be focusing on. Sometimes when we get locked into the really specific pieces, it's hard to remember what the bigger picture is. So this document's been great. I've used it several times. It's by grade. I'm sure other boards have something similar. Now, don't panic when you see how small this is. Okay, I have been teaching for over 2 decades. I have to wear my glasses for this, but this here is the document that I've been referring to. So this is the kindergarten one. If we look down the left-hand side, you're going to see it has every outcome. And then as we look across the top, where it says KUSP summary, this is our knowledge base. And I've really worked hard at summarizing these. So it's exactly what's in the curriculum, but it's pared down in short form. So for instance, KUSP 1.1 in kindergarten, individual or group physical activity, PA, includes play, transportation, recreation, and seasons. So that's the knowledge base. The next one down is our U, which is understanding. So this says we can explore physical activity in different contexts or seasons. And what we're evaluating students on is, can they perform physical activity that provides personal enjoyment? Right. So we're seeing if students can be active and enjoy it. In another session I'm doing down the road, we're going to talk about how to use discussion in Phys.Ed. But so example like this is a really easy one to put in almost every cycle, because we're going to see that change as we move forward. Right. So when I sit down to plan, these are the documents I used. They're designed to be printed on 17 by 11. And what I can do is I can check them off as I go by. So we go, okay, January, what do we want to look at? Okay, it's winter. Maybe we'll do some volleyball type games. And then you can find the specific outcome that you're putting in there. Next one over. This is another long range plan. Now, this one is really basic. This one is really simple, because in each month, what we're doing is we're just breaking down. We're going to do target games. I'm going to show you a few resources, even today, where you could go to target games, and there's going to be 10 activities right there. So you can print those off, work through them in the month, see how they go. As you see, it's not that different than planning for math, planning for other subjects. And this is an incredibly detailed one. This is from a colleague of mine. So this is grade 4 and 6. Again, from the old curriculum, because up to this year, many of us were still using it. So in September, the dimensions, he's using cooperative games and team building. Okay, so he's got a hard skill and a soft skill. The general outcomes, he just lists them there so he knows what's going on. The specific outcomes, these would be things like can move to open space, can work with a team. Oh, it wouldn't be, because this is A's, but this is where you'd put those specifics. Okay? And down here, he's like, for each one, he's got 4 or 5 different outcomes. And over the course of the year, he's going to hit all of those. And see here, specific outcomes for C and D will be incorporated into all months. We have to be a little more specific with this new curriculum, because it really is geared to the grade. So each grade has some very specific skills that they would like teachers to hit. And again, he's got some resources. These ones are great. I still use all of them. Okay. So one more thing I want to show you before we go back and take a look at how to use this new curriculum to lock in these big steps. Right. Hopefully you're still with me. It's been a long day teaching. I had a long day, but we'll keep pushing through here. So this website is called the Phys.Ed Specialist. I really like this guy. He's based in the States, but this little video that he has is a brilliant way to take a look at setting up the big chunks in your year. Okay. I think it's like he does it in about 10 minutes. He even breaks it down. Plan your units as instruction, right? And he's got a nice template in here. It's pretty straightforward. I don't break things down by week as he does. And he's got the template in here. So you'll have a link to this within the slide deck as well. Okay. And the last thing is the one that I've built. It's been really hard finding templates built on the new curriculum because it's quite new. So this is an Excel spreadsheet this says docs, but it is an Excel spreadsheet that will be included in the resources. So in here, I always like to know what my dimensions are, what my organizing ideas are while I'm planning. And the other thing is our focus. So I've put these in TGFU focus. So this is the teaching games for understanding. If you're using a traditional setup, you don't need that. You can just delete it. And I'm giving you the Excel file that you can just copy. Okay. So once you have it, it's yours, and change it, modify it as you want. So same thing here. We've got organizing ideas. We've got a focus. So for me, I'm going to be focusing on teamwork, or I'm going to be working on cooperation. One of the cool ones in the new curriculum is actually, what's it called? Consent. Right. So how do we get consent? How do we ask for consent? How do we deny consent? What a beautiful thing to actually bring into some of our Phys.Ed classes. In here, I've actually broken this down into your organizing ideas for Phys.Ed. So this is a physical education long-range plan. So here I can just list 1.1 or 1.2, movement, 1.3, 2B3, whatever it is that I'm going to be working on, that's going to guide my assessment. And again, venues, you can add these. Assessment, am I going to be using rubrics? Am I going to use a student self-assessment? Is it going to be observation? And the last thing is resources. Now, as I mentioned, that is the Phys.Ed one. For the well-being long-range plan, I've built this out with the main dimensions from the well-being framework, which is consent, mutual respect, dignity, and responsibility. This is what they all kind of tailor into. If you saw my last session, hopefully you remember that there's about 12 different frameworks in this curriculum. So the well-being one gives us this opportunity again. So what am I going to be focused on? What's the big umbrella that I can dial into? And in this one, our organizing ideas are character, safety, nutrition, relationship, growth, and finances. So there's a lot of them in here, right? Oh, and I didn't change them down here for the cusps. I'll get that changed up for you though. Right. And one other thing that I put in here is this cross-curricular. So which of these can I do in ELA? Which can I do in social, science, or anywhere else? There's so many neat things within the health part, especially in the growth and development and the character piece, that you can easily do through a piece of writing in ELA and cover 2 or 3 cusps in that one piece of writing. Maybe do it 2 or 3 times in the year. Right. So those are the key kind of pieces. And I know it's kind of overwhelming. When I sat down to try and do unit planning in about half an hour, I just wanted to give you different templates and let you know that there is no right or wrong way. The big thing is try and keep switching up those dimensions and just make sure we've got all of these key pieces together. So this is, again, is a bit of a snapshot from the summary tool. I use the summary tool a lot. If you prefer the curriculum, just find a way to make sure that you can record what specific question that you're working on, because some of them are really specific. Like this one here, this is from grade, I think this is grade 2. So this one here says tactics for individual and group goals include changing direction, speed, levels, and passing an object. If you know that's your focus, what that means is that all your warm-ups, all your little games that you're doing to build, when you're giving feedback in a game, it's just focused on that, because we're trying to move kids forward. Exactly like when you're doing reading work with kids. If you take that F&P, that Fontenay Pinnell, or whatever the new one is, it's been years since I've done it. When you're doing that, we're trying to identify, oh, this kid doesn't have these vowel sounds, so that's what I'm going to work on. The gym is the same kind of puzzle, right? Every kid's a puzzle. So when we have that focus for that cycle, you can either decide the tactic ahead of time, or you can pick the activity and match the tactic to it. So I start with these big movement pieces. So I decide, okay, this is the one I want to hit. There's only 5 in this grade. So you hit 1 or 2 every cycle, you're good to go. These ones, this is the B sequence. So it's either my movement skills. So locomotion includes slide, chase. Pretty straightforward on that one. Next one, non-locomotor includes twist, rise, and lower. Elementary Phys.Ed is all about having fun and integrating this stuff in here. For object manipulation, and this is one cusp, right? So this cusp is probably going to go over several cycles. Sending, including punting, striking, retaining, including cradling, like, so it covers a lot of things. But what you're actually evaluating on is this: apply elements of movement in physical activity. So in the assessment guide that I have, what I've done is I've pulled out just the skills and procedures. So when you're marking, you can quickly reference that, go, oh yeah, I'm working on elements of movement, which is locomotive, non-locomotive, and sending. From there, then I would go to the active living. So active living is going to come through sometimes writing in your class. Mostly it's going to come from discussions and giving kids flexibility with what they do. Can you find ways for students to modify games, make up games? Right? Like this one here in blue, the blue ones are things that I'm going to be really focusing on in some of my other sessions. So I love this. Participates in physical education activity that increases in complexity. What a beautiful cusp to have. So how do we do that? Well, we start a game and then we stop it. And we have kids then give us some ideas on what rules to add, what to change. Right? And then we can actually have discussions on which kids like that. Right? But again, that's another session. So I would do the movement pieces, then I do active living, then I would go to the safety. Safety, again, is going to be embedded throughout your class. The pedagogy in the gym, the safety kind of it's like the pre-teaching. So like a student can't write words until they can understand their letters or their vowel sounds. A student can't do algebra until they understand integers. All of those pieces, safety is that kind of overarching piece. Because if we don't have students understanding safety and working on it, then what happens is we set ourselves up for injuries. Number one injury that I hear from most generalists has to do with tag, especially early in the year, because they didn't think to do some pre-teaching around that. Character, so as we go down the list, character again, now I'm going to read my character and go, great, what do I want to look at for this next cycle? This one is 3-1, roles, occupations have requirements, purpose, and expectations. I don't do anything in the gym. I don't set up, I don't carry equipment. That's my student's job. So again, if this is what I'm focusing on, that's going to be my primary focus for everything I'm talking about. Why do I say that so many times? The reason being is that I just planned a whole unit using this summary document. So I'd go to grade 3 and I've got an idea of what I want to do. I want to do some low organizational games. So I look at the movement, I pick a few that are going to fit. Then I go to the activity, I make sure my safety is in there. And most safety, there's only 3 or 4. And as you get old, as they get higher grades, they start to become about substances, right? So how can we be safe with substances? And they're alluding to drugs and stuff like that. Then I jump into the character. So how much fun can I have giving kids roles in the gym for the next month? Okay, so it's such a, for me, it's such a beautiful way to build out a really well-rounded Phys.Ed, even if you only have 20 minutes. Here's the links. Cart before the horse. There are 2 main ways to plan Phys.Ed. Number one is you look at the outcomes, you slot them in, then you go and find the outcome or find the activities. So let's say that we're going to do a net and wall game. So I say, okay, great. We're going to start with balloon ball. Then we're going to do some volleyball. Then we're going to play some wall ball. And then maybe we're going to try and do some volleyball. So in that one, I'm not actually looking for the outcomes. That would be the opposite. So that's plan the activities. Then you go into your curriculum to find the outcomes. The other way is to literally just pick what's a movement skill we want to cover, write that down, and then you go look for the activities, or you brainstorm and create the activities. Got that one. Tracking tools for planning, went through that. And just as a quick reminder, these are the dimensions. So here's our 8 dimensions, the OIs. These are the dimensions. Here's our health dimensions. And each one of those health dimensions also has its own framework. Okay. So I'm just going to pull up one more thing here. I just want to show you this assessment tool, and then I'll take a couple of questions, and then we'll dive into your planning. Just give me one moment. Planning assessment. Do I have that assessment? I know it's in here. While I'm waiting, while I'm trying to track this, here it is, scope and sequence. I'll just show you what this planning tool looks like. Now, can I get to it? Video resources. There it is. Assessment. Here it goes. So in here, this is a fill-outable Excel spreadsheet. So you'll notice that I've listed all, so these are active living, movement skills, character. So you can actually import your students' names right in this. And as you go through the year, you can just check it off. The other piece that I have associated with this is this. So this is all the performance and skills pieces for that grade. And you see it comes down pretty small, right? So financial literacy, we have 1. For active living, we have 3 pieces. So this is what you're evaluating. Performs physical activity that provides personal enjoyment, can discuss, rest allows the body to recover from physical activity, and participate in a variety of physical activity and games. Those are the active living things that we're assessing on. Okay, that's not so bad. So if we lock those in and put them in, we now have the opportunity to kind of play around with them a bit. All right. As I promised, let's take a look at some questions. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, things that I can take a closer look at before we move on to the other half. Has this been helpful? Because I have one more of these to do. Are you getting something from this? I know it's a lot of talking. No. Can you guys hear me? Hopefully you guys can hear me. Oh, Kim, there's my, she's my one who keeps me going. I always know if she can hear me. So that's fantastic. Okay.
I just a short question. Do you use, if you have a lot of resources already, books and materials, do you use a lot of that with the new curriculum?
100%, Kim. What a great question. So if you take a deeper dive into this, and I've spent about 12 hours trying to analyze this curriculum. So I was part of the team that was looking at resources for the last curriculum. What I find is that movement piece, for me, it's the second piece where we have spatial awareness, we have movement skills, and we have the care. They're almost identical. So I am actually just updating a lot of my plans with the new outcomes. Absolutely. The other piece that is neat that I'm actually really excited that it's in the wellness piece is the financial piece. So I'll mention this again, that the ARPDC has already compiled a pretty robust financial support piece for teachers in elementary. But yeah, absolutely. Most of my resources I use now, Kim, when I'm looking for new stuff is online, right? But I don't know if you have, I don't have it here. The old HPEC guide to implementation on the ABCDs, that thing has got over 200 activities that you can pull and play right away. So absolutely, yeah. The big difference between this curriculum and the last is that the skill set that they're asking like a grade 2 teacher to do are very specific. It is like the locomotor skills are hop, jump, run. Right now, remember, like just like you're teaching in an elementary classroom, you're going to have kids reading at a grade 9 level, a grade 2 level, a grade 5 level. So you have to be able to, you don't have to. It's good if we can adapt to challenge that kid who is physically talented, but also help that kid who is just learning how to skip feel included. And after we get through this session, my next sessions are more about in the gym, how to teach Phys.Ed, how to teach spatial awareness. So that's kind of the stuff we'll start talking about as we move forward. But great question, Kim. Great question. Any others before we dive in? This is going to be like a mini master series. Okay, let's go. Am I still recording? Yes, good. I don't have Trish with me this year. So teaching games for understanding. Just in the chat, if you've heard of teaching games for understanding, can you just say yes or no? Just give me an idea here. Type it in. Yeah, good. Good. No, okay. No. Great. Okay. All right, fantastic. So Rebecca, at any time, feel free to unmute and add your experience if you're using it. I'm not a PhD candidate. I'm not a master's student. I'm not a specialist. I'm a phys ed teacher. So anything I'm giving you is kind of the sum total of my experience over the years. And if it works for you, great. If not, that's okay too. Modify it. Okay. In the next session, what I'd love for you to do, if you've never heard of this, find one or two things, one or two new perspectives, just something to like drive a wedge into a practice that you're doing right now to see if you can expand the experience for your kids. That's it. One or two things. So I'm going to talk about the background because, again, my research, I'm an action researcher in the program I'm in. My research always talks about the overarching. You need to understand the background before we can pick and choose. So the history and background is going to take a while. I was fortunate to be able to be mentored by a gentleman by the name of Rick Bell and Tim Hopper. These guys are like second generation teaching games for understanding, one of the first groups to do it in Canada. I worked with them at KFED. I worked with them at HPEC. These guys are brilliant. And they were one of the first groups to actually build a TGFU teaching program in UVic. Okay, we're going to look at the 4 categories of teaching games for understanding. I'm going to give you some resources right there. I'm going to show you a 4-minute video, and then I'm going to show you how I would break down a really common activity and shift it. All right, so let's go. I don't need to talk about myself. Just as a side note, this video has already been recorded in 2 sessions. So everything I do live, there are already support videos for you to find on the AER PDC. And those are not an hour. I've tried to break them down into 2. My next 2 series is going to have 6 videos. So if you just need a refresher or someone you're like, hey, check this out, you can send them there. For the first part of this, I'm going to go way back to 2007 when teaching games for understanding was a big buzzword. This comes from the Health and Physical Education Journal. So this individual is awesome who wrote this. But again, this is wordy. Okay, I'm not going to read it. The slide deck is yours. You can go through it after. The big thing is teaching games for understanding started in the 80s in England when a group of academics decided that they wanted a new model where learners would actually learn by playing games. So they started to look at the traditional version of here's a skill, shoot the hoop, shoot the hoop, shoot the hoop, dribble the ball, dribble the ball, dribble the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball. Because what they were finding is that young kids, when they went to play the game, they had no idea how to move on court. So their hypothesis was that the way games are being taught don't do kids the service to think and make decisions. This all started to come out after like the World War, and we were starting to build students in an educational environment where they were designed to do what they were told. That doesn't work so well in sport. So once these games were developed, what they started to see was that if they started to listen to the kids and adapt, that when they started to like participate in the actual game, their movement was way better. Yeah, their skills weren't as good, but they understood the game. So there's a few key things to teaching TGFU. I'll just call it that. You're now all experts. You know what TGFU is. So the first one is that we're trying to promote positive youth development and critical thinking. Critical thinking is what separates people who are athletic and athletes. And the cool thing is that you can build this into any kid at any level. So decision making, this is the cornerstone of teaching games for understanding. But that also means is that as teachers, we can't control all the time. We have to let go of what we think needs to happen and let the students make their own choices up and have them talk to each other. Reflection. In order to get better at tactics and strategies, we're going to talk about micro teachings in another unit. Because if you see something happening, for example, I was giving my kids today this silly little game where they had to run around and find open space. And when I blew the whistle, they had to stop and pivot. That was it. That was the whole warm up. And this is in grade 9. We're still doing that. So they were running around. I blew the whistle. They stopped. I'd say, okay, go again. And this time I saw them all following their friends. So I blew the whistle. I said, stop. Okay, how do you find open space? They didn't actually know. So I said, you might actually have to stop, change direction, and go to where there aren't people. Okay, that's tactical reflection. Then we ask them what worked, what didn't. Okay, those tiny little discussions are going to take Phys.Ed from games that kids play at recess to like a language arts class where they're actually learning how to think in the games. Right? So we do, it's a lot about strategy. I'm not going to read this. I'll leave this, go back to it. In essence, this is an idea where you break your kids into 3 groups. 2 groups are playing soccer. The third group is going to be a commentator. They're going to ref the game. They're going to keep score. And what happens is that those kids rotate through fairly quickly. And at the end of the day, you can have these conversations about, well, like, what can you say to improve someone's performance? How did it feel to be an official? What did you notice when you were officiating? Right? So again, these are just subtle differences that many elementary generalists don't have exposure to, because like doctors used to be with nutrition, the elementary generalist gets maybe 1 or 2 little modules of Phys.Ed. These are the things that really make Phys.Ed exciting to teach, and they don't require extra planning. All they require is, what am I going to focus on and how am I going to get there? This is kind of the overall framework. In this, we're starting the game with a game. We never start with skill. From there, we go into a game appreciation. So this is where we're going to add things to the game, increasing complexity that's directly from the curriculum. When we increase complexity, you hit 2 or 3 different cusps. The next thing is the tactical discussions. What works? What doesn't? What can you do differently? Those 3 questions are life-changing in the gym, all the way down to grade 1 and 2. What worked when you did this? Well, I ran after him and I tagged him. Great. What didn't? It didn't work when he hid in the corner, whatever it is. What are you going to do different? I'm going to chase a different kid because that kid's too fast. Right there, you've brought that out into a group environment. Right. Next thing is making decisions, helping. Do you see kids making decisions? And as soon as we see that next tactical level hit, we move on to the next skill progression. Okay. Now, teaching games for understanding is a broad term. If I said, what's a good word from math? Phonics. If I say the word phonics, everyone on this call will be like, yeah, it's awesome. No, it sucks. No, it's okay. This is the best resource. Teaching games for understanding is the same. So there are lots of different takes on it. Okay, there's lots of different ways to go about it. I'm going to show you the full curricular breakout, and then I'm going to break it down in a way that I think anyone can implement in a couple of weeks. All right, here we go. This is the original from Werner, Thorpe, and Bunker. Now, this one was published in 1996. It's slightly cleaner than the one that they developed in 1980. In this, we have many different features. Kim, can you see my cursor, or am I just waving that around? You can? Okay, thank you. So in this, we're starting with a game. And that game is a modified game. Now, you notice these 2 arrows that go up and down. This is where we turn left from traditional Phys.Ed teaching, because we have to consider the learner, their age and stage, and what they're interested in. So, for example, the game I was doing today, where I had my grade 9s moving to open space, that's a lead up to handball. They don't know that yet, but that's a lead up to handball. Because right now, I don't know where they're at in terms of open space. I don't want to put them into a game if they're going to clump around like a 4-year-old soccer tournament at the community, right? I don't want to see an amoeba running around, because then we can't do any tactical awareness. So this game, I'm going to start as low as possible, the simplest game possible, to see what happens. From there, we move into game appreciation. This is where we play it for a while and we ask, what's working? What's good? What do you want to change? From there, the game is starting to get a little more complicated. This is our tactical awareness. How did the game change when we added a 3-second rule? Okay. Now, when we start to see those students start to make different decisions, now we can have a micro teaching. And when I say discussions, I'm talking 30 seconds to a minute max. Okay. We do not want kids sitting for long in the gym. So this is like, what could you do and how do you do it? Right? So we'll break this down a little further on. And then once we start to see that, now we're going to go into skill execution. Now, this means that now we want to see them apply these decisions. Maybe this is where we're going to create a drill so they have to pass the ball because they suck at that, and that's holding them back. Then we're looking for the performance, and then we go to the next set of modified games. If you look at tag, I could do a 2-hour session just on getting kids ready to play tag. I will never let a group play tag until I've seen them do 3 or 4 things repeatedly. First one is get to open space with your head facing where you're going. Do they actually know how to follow someone safely? Okay. A lot of injuries happen when kids are running too close and they clip each other's feet and they trip and they land on each other. Heads hit heads, heads hit heads, and you often get like sprained wrists. That's totally preventable, especially if you look at it from this model. The first thing I do with kids in the gym is I just have them move around on their own. The second thing is a game called Truck and Trailer, where they're in like partners and they literally just follow each other around the gym. Okay? From there, it gets more and more complicated. But this is the framework that started in the 80s. Okay, these are just some quotes that I pulled out. The first game has to be at the appropriate age and stage. And it's got to be fun. If you see your kids moping around add something to it. In elementary, have them be an animal. Like, it's not hard, right? Put some music on. Say, when you hear the music stop, strike a pose. That's it, right? Then you can introduce levels, high, low, right? Like all of these stuff, you increase fun, increase the challenge. When you start, super simple game. Sampling is what we do when we modify games and we play a bunch of different games. Representation, you see this word in the literature. This is why I just want to bring it to your awareness. Representation is when, as I said, I'm teaching a handball unit, but those kids are actually learning right now how to move around the space. I'm representing a piece. Okay. Again, just like I like to use writing analogy, because in writing, what I found is that kids had so many ideas, but they couldn't plan. So in order for them to write a paragraph or even a sentence, some of them have to represent that in a much simpler format. So the teaching games for understanding model is about representing where you want them to get to and being patient, right? It's like slow cooking, right? Good things come from slow cooking. Kids are going to say, we want to play basketball. And you're like, you're not ready. Slow it down. We'll find some games to get you there. Yep. So the representation, again, is just reducing the tactical complexity. For example, every fielding game can be reduced to two things. Number one, scoring runs. Number two, preventing runs. Now, if you break scoring runs down, that's batting, running, strategy. Maybe it's running with more than one batter. When you're preventing runs, now we have catching, we have communication, we have running, we have using a base, all of those pieces. Each one of those could be a game on its own. Okay, I use a lot of like rubber chickens in these things. All right, so here's the keys. Again, look for one or two things. What's one of these things that you might be able to try to shift something you're already doing? All right. Does anyone have a game they play regularly with their kids or their students? If you do, just like, it's like we're like behind in math. We got 20 minutes for gym. What's your go-to? If you can throw one or two of those in, I can kind of talk about these in a slightly different way. Hopefully I'm not so boring. You got Netflix on the other tab, but anyone got a game? If you put it in, I'm going to give you some strategies right now. If you don't, you're going to have to come up with them on your own. Pop up, everybody's it. Okay, I don't even know what that is. Is that like a tag game?
Yeah, it's tag. Everybody's it. And if you get tagged, you sit down, you have to watch the person that tagged you. When they get tagged, you pop up.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So, okay, so right there, what a great game. Okay, so it's like everyone's tag, right? Everyone's at tag kind of. It's like the reverse of revenge tag. Yeah. Okay, so first thing, once you play that once, like the discussion piece can be really quick, especially if you see, here's a big, not a red flag, but here's a big thing to watch for. Do you have the same kids winning each game? So do you have a couple of kids who are super strong at that game? And if you do, watch them and then see if you can have other kids identify what that kid does. Here's another thing. In the Teaching Games for Understanding model, it actually serves to equalize the playing field. So for example, if I'm really good with teaching games for understanding, I could play against a kid in grade 2 and it would be even. So we can modify and manipulate the games, the rules, the playing area. So my task is 100 times harder than that grade 2 kid. Okay. So again, discussion and questioning, debriefing. So if you see the same kids who are sitting down all the time, these are the kids where you want to start giving them the tools and the strategies. Maybe they just don't know where to look. Okay. Maybe you need to do a whole activity with that group on who is it and who to avoid. Maybe that's a big part of it. If you keep getting tagged, stay as far away from those two kids as you possibly can because they tag everybody, right? Readjusting. How can you add things into that game to change it? So number one, in Phys.Ed, our goal is to get kids active. So instead of them sitting down, could you have them jog on the spot, do jumping jacks? Could you have them shuffle their feet? One thing I do if I have kids sitting down, I use taggers a lot. I don't use hand tagging very much. But if a kid is sitting down, they can tag anyone who's running past them and get back up, and then they switch. Right. So how can we maximize the time so you don't have those kids who aren't very fast sitting all the time? Listen to the learners. Here's a hard thing to do for many teachers. Say, great, this is a cool game. I'm going to put you in groups of 4 or 5. Let's see if we can come up with one new rule for everybody up, or pop up everybody's it. What are we going to do? Right. And try it. Put it in. It may suck. Some of those games suck. But then you go, okay, why did it suck? Well, because we couldn't run. Right? The last one is adapting the game to suit. So, for example, instead of sitting the first time you get tagged, maybe you start by running. As soon as you get tagged, you can only walk. After that, you have to walk like an old man. So now you have 3 chances to get hit before you have to sit down. Right? So this is that flexible thinking that teaching games for understanding starts to allow us to manipulate. Okay, because if you're walking, it's actually easier to stand on the side and hit people coming by. So there's actually an advantage to going slow. Right. So those are kind of the key things that I go to. And I change games constantly. Sometimes within 30 seconds, I'll change the game. This stuff here, we've kind of talked about. These are some of the definitions. Again, if you're really interested in it, you can come back through it. This is from the research from OFIA. These are our 4 main categories. So when I'm planning my year plan now, and when you look through the new curriculum, they're kind of leading us towards these areas. Again, you don't have to use them. If you want to do a volleyball unit, tag unit, a circus unit, an Inuit games unit, a world games unit, do them. No one's going to call you on that because the curriculum is very open. In elementary, though, the difference is that instead of doing, let's say, volleyball, we're going to do a hitting or a striking unit. And in that striking, we can, or I mean, a net and wall game. So we can hit balloons, we can hit volleyballs, we can hit Nerf balls, we can hit shuttles, we can hit yarn balls, we can hit tennis balls that are stuffed in pantyhose. That's our unit, is to teach kids the skills around the tactic, not the specific unit. Right. So these are the 4, and these are based on commonalities in the games. So target games, these are throwing objects. These ones are super fun for warm-ups. For those of you teaching the lower grades, this is hilarious. Get some beanbags and some hula hoops, set them up. You can do like a golf course or not. Just see if a kid can throw a beanbag into a hula hoop. That skill will serve them so well down the road. Okay, there's so many of these little easy games that kids get addicted to because they're challenging. So disc golf, curling, bowling, darts. There's plastic magnet darts now. Snow snakes. It's not really a target game, but you do have to have some stuff. Hit the cone. Here's a fascinating little game. You get 2 kids, 1 tennis ball. Put a cone in the middle. They have to throw the ball over their head and try and make it hit the cone. That's it. That's the game. But kids start to get really involved in it. And if you have a kid who's really good at it, you can put the cone close to a wall. Now they have to bounce the ball off the wall and then hit the cone. Right. So these are those target types of games, generally not as active. So these are great little games if you have limited space, limited time, but you are developing that skill. The next one is net and wall games. This is sending an object into space and trying to make it hard for the other team to retrieve it. And the other thing is you're trying to retrieve the object, to hit it back. So we got volleyball, badminton, kinsei. If you don't know kinsei, stay tuned. Okay, best game I've ever found to teach so many things. It's a game from Ecuador. Table tennis, pickleball, 4 square is actually a net and wall game. Okay, next one, striking and fielding. As it implies, most people go to baseball. Please don't hate me for this one. I hate baseball. I taught it for 10 years. I will never teach softball or baseball again in Phys.Ed. If kids are interested, I'll help them learn how to bat. I don't like it in the gym at all, especially in elementary. If you use it, use it. Okay, these are just my opinions, and I have some strong ones. Things like quick cricket, rounders, kickball, chaos. If you've never heard of lapta, Lapta is a Russian baseball game, way cooler than baseball. Softball, there's another one called Gilli Danda. This is an Indian game where you don't have a ball, you hit a tiny little piece of wood. So these are all that side of things. And these are the ones that are traditionally make up 80% of our Phys.Ed. So zone and invasion games, this is anywhere where you're defending, right? You have offense and defense. Job is to get into the zone, prevent people from getting into yours. There's a lot of really unique ones that I didn't put on here. There's one that involves no object. It's called, what is that game called? Shoot, I just lost it. Yoshi. There's a game called Yoshi, and it's basically a straight strategic game of invasion. It's a really neat game. I'll type it up and put it in one of our next sessions on this. So those are the zones. So what you start to see is that if we're doing invasion games as a school, right, or even as a division, invasion games, now you have the flexibility to do some rugby, right? To do some ultimate frisbee. You can mix it up every day. You can play ultimate frisbee with a rubber chicken, right? You can keep the rules super simple though, right? You don't have to add all the complicated stuff. So again, those are the two different ways to plan that year. So again, just a reminder, traditional is warm-up, skill, drills, maybe a modified game or the full game, and then you cool down. TGFU is we're going to warm up. We're going to play some kind of warm-up game that suits it. And we're going to ask. We're going to talk about the tactics. How are we going to make this better? How can we make this more fun? What are we doing that might be holding us back? What rules can we get rid of? What equipment can we change? Then we change the game, right? We go back to the game. We play it again. Then we make some changes to it. And then we just keep on cycling. So these are the main ways, the same thing. That's the difference. Okay, I've talked about that quite a bit. So what time we got? I think what I'm going to do, just because I want to leave some time for comments, you guys will get this slide deck. This is a 4-minute video, and it just walks you through a really simple game. It's a great video. I really like this guy. He's done a great job of it. And it just kind of shows you how active the teacher is. So in this style, the teacher, you got to be watching. You got to be watching. You're looking for how can we make it better? When do I stop it? What can I add? Where am I trying to get to? Okay, so I'll leave that for you to watch there. Oh, no, apparently I'm not. Stop it. Thank you. There. I also found this really cool Prezi. This is for a grade 6 basketball unit. Again, it's going to walk you through a whole lesson. Remember, people spend 12 years in school learning how to use and implement this framework. So it's not something that we just jump into. All right. That being said, here is a Teaching Games for Understanding lesson plan. Again, I found it really hard to find these. So this is something that I've built. So I built this as a starting point. And again, I'll give you the Excel or the doc version. This is just a PDF. But you'll notice that here, I've got my specific focus. So whatever it is, moving to open space. Initial game, organizing and setup is this is kind of like your equipment. You can draw a little picture of it. And then our observations. So what are you looking to see here? Are you looking to see if kids clump up? Am I looking to see if kids can find space? The next thing is the questions. I'm pretty specific with my questions if I'm trying to push kids to a certain place. You may leave this open and write them while you're watching. You may not know what the next iteration is. Okay. After that, if I'm doing like a skill, let's say we're doing a basketball unit, I may have a goal for this day, and that's dribbling. So I would take this initial game, then I would add in a ball of some kind. Practice, this is the practice skill. It might be similar. Then we do another situational game, and then I'd wrap it up. That's pretty much it. And this is the even simpler version. So this is outcomes, soft skills. Okay, this is those safety, the character, the relationship pieces. You can pick one. Today, we're going to work on teamwork, okay, or communication, lesson focus. What am I trying to get kids to do? Skill, the tactic, the soft skill. Game 1, discussion. Okay, what do I want them to build? Game 2, discussion. If I add another modification, maybe this is going to set me up for the third. So when you start this, does this look like it takes a lot of time? Kind of, but it's also a new curriculum. And we know that when we do that, it's going to take a little bit of time. So here's one. This is a game that I gave students this diagram. So I gave this to a class. I said, we're going to play a dodgeball game. This is the court. You tell me the game. So they had 5 minutes in teams of 4 to come up with the games. They created the coolest game we have played in years. So this was our first game. Again, you'll have this. This is in the resources. But basically, it was like a bench dodgeball. It was too easy, though, so we modified it. They modified it. Then we played it again. They even identified one of the skills that we need for next time, which is sniping a ball out of the air, right? Because they were defending by hitting a ball that was already thrown out of the air. That's going to be our skill. We're going to build a game to do that next time. This is an example of the resources from, this is PHE Canada. So it's a really simple game called Wall Ball. And it's going to give you some of these little breakdowns. Okay, so it's going to break it down. Here's your observations. Often they'll even give you questions to ask. What did you have to do to successfully throw and catch the ball off the wall? That's teaching games for understanding. Ask a simple question. Which round were you and your partner most successful? Super quick. Okay, so these resources are already built out for you. I've also included this in the resource section. This is an overview. I think it's about 10 pages, but it summarizes a lot of the things that we just talked about. I know a lot of people don't like my stuff, so I try and find something different. And this is a huge document, 76 pages, but it's filled with activities. This is from New Zealand. There's some of the top people in this right now. So this is 3 versus 1 tag. You notice over here, they've got, what is the best way to get your opponent out? They have the guiding questions for you. How do you play the ball? What are some of the questions, the strategic questions? And the cool thing here is, look, it starts with 3 to 1, goes to 2 to 2, goes to 3 to 1, goes to 4 to 4. Now we're into an invasion game. So that right there is probably like 10 days worth of a Phys.Ed class. Okay, so this is called the Teaching Games for Understanding resource. I've just linked it in there for you. And speaking of resources, where did this go? I can't actually see it, but in the bottom, there should be, Kim, do you see the link down there? Does it say link to OFIA? Okay, I can't click on it right now, but OFIA is the Ontario Physical Education organization. They have it by grade. And when you click on that link, and it's a live link, it will take you to a page that'll give you 10 striking and fielding games for grade 5 to grade, or age 5 to grade 12. Okay, super cool resource. They've done an amazing job of it. Okay, just gonna get back to the end here. If you have to go, I do want to honor your time. I am going to go a little over here. So if you have to go, I won't feel offended. Do what you need to do. I've been going since 7 o'clock this morning, so I understand. This Gaga Ball is such a huge game right now. And what I'm finding is that Gaga Ball is an elimination game. Okay, so there's also skills in Gaga Ball that when I watch a class play over and over, it's usually the same 4 kids who win. Okay, and in Teaching Games for Understanding, that's our red flag. Because what that means is that we have not built that class up to understand the game well enough to beat the top kids. Okay, so for example, if you have a kid who's like 1-2 or 1-1 in a session, they can only use their non-dominant hand now. Okay, we have to give them some kind of a disadvantage to equalize the playing field, because Phys.Ed is not about competition. It's not. That's what our organized sports are. This is about how can you play a game where everyone has fun right out of the new curriculum, enjoyment in physical activity. So can you teach kids how to hit a ball on the ground? Some kids can't. Can you teach them how to track a student and hit a moving target? How do you get away from that ball? I play Gaga Ball without the boundaries. Figure that one out. Half a gym, no boundaries. It's a totally different game. If you have one Gaga ball pit, any kid who gets out, can they start a second Gaga ball pit right away? Because we don't want those kids standing out in gym. We don't have enough time, right? So when you're looking at this, I would start with the scope and sequence. I would just take a look down. What movement skills can we move? Locomotor, non-locomotor. Skills strategy. Again, what do we want? Do we want kids complimenting each other or cheering for them when they get out? That's communication. That's how encouragement can help people participate. So there are so many rich things for a generalist to pull out of this curriculum and highlight. You're going to see a really, really cool change in how your students start to work together. And that is from this new curriculum. So it is a bit of a document to get into, but keep at it, keep working through it. My goal is to film 17 videos by the end of this year. Okay, so most of them I'm hoping are going to be around 10 to 15 minutes. I have 7 live sessions like this. Each one's covering a different thing. All right, that's that. Truck and trailer, don't have time today. My next series, it's a 2-part series. This is a big one. Okay, this one is on effective PE pedagogy. This is 25 years of me working with over 30 master teachers around the province and in the country. So I do this as a teachers convention session. I'm breaking it down into 6 different videos for the asynchronous part. The synchronous one is going to be 2 2-hour sessions, and we're going to go over the difference between the gym and the classroom. We're going to go over how to be successful as a teacher, how to help students be successful. We're going to look at building character and team sports development or teamwork development. We're going to look at what's the next one? Discussions, how to embed discussions into your class. And lastly, how to quickly and efficiently assess students across the year. It's a huge 2 sessions, but this will set us up for the last couple of series. I'm going to do a specific one on spatial awareness. Then we're going to look at throwing and catching and sending. And then we're also going to look at like batting and striking. All right. Thank you, Rebecca. It's coming. This is a big jump for me. There's a lot of resources I got to find. I'm not used to doing that. But last thing is, this is me. If you want to talk personally, I do set up sessions with people around the province. If you got a specific question, send me an email. We can jump on a call. If not, thank you so much for coming. I have about 10 more minutes if you have questions or specifics. I'm going to take a big breath because that was a heavy session. I'll be in the gym for the next one. Okay. So thank you, Carrie, don't know how to say that. But if you have a question, just unmute and we can chat. Oh, I'm just going to stop the recording. Stop recording.